Hey everyone, welcome back. Cam with Inky Knuckles here. It's been quite a while since we did one of these. Mikhail, howdy, glad to see you or speak with you. Tonight we got a very special one with a couple gentlemen. The host of this show, Mr. Troy Nixey. How you doing, Troy?
The co-host. I'm gonna say co-host till the end of time. So I'm very well, thank you.
Awesome.
It's still your show, Cam.
Yeah, that's true. I just find I don't have as many interesting things to say these days as you guys do. But it's been great. Thanks for hopping back on. We've had a little bit of a hiatus, but
yeah, it's just been really busy for everyone, and then trying to line up schedules and stuff. So it's weird. The fall always seems to hit, and people get really busy.
Yeah, it is the changing of the seasons. We all go a little crazy too.
That too.
So tonight we're interviewing someone very special who both of us are a huge fan of. And
yes.
Let's just get right into it. Mr. Jim Mahfood. How you doing, Jim?
What's up? How are you?
Good.
It's
good to have you.
So I was trying to do the math, and I'm terrible at math, but you and I have known each other since the mid-90s. Is that about right?
97.
Okay.
San Diego was when I met Bob Schreck when he debuted Oni Press.
Yeah.
And I think we were trying to figure this out on Sean's show. I think that you and I met at his table at some point.
Yeah.
And then 98, like the Clerks book came out, and you were probably in Oni Double Feature. And we were officially signing together at the Oni booth.
That's right.
So
was that the year that Lou Ferrigno was hanging out beside us?
Oh my God!
Do you remember that?
Yes, I do. Probably that year, like 98 or 99.
Yeah, because we did do a few years in a row, but that was pretty surreal.
Conventions themselves, man, are always. It's sort of a blur now, but there's been stages through my career of like, or this era or that era. Like it started off with Oni, and then I had an era of setting up every year with Scott Morse.
Yeah.
Behind Alan Spiegel's table at San Diego, and that was like a 5 or 6 year thing. And then we did Trickster, which was our rebellion against Comic-Con.
Yeah.
Convention. And then, so and then I had a phase of like recently I usually set up next to Jason Sean Alexander at shows. We're kind of like convention homies. Sean Crystal, Mateo, that crew. So yeah, it's been over 23 years.
It's crazy. It's crazy. Yeah, it's I was thinking of that because next year will be my 30th year since I was published, which is just kind of bananas to me because it went by just like that. Like I remember hanging out with you and Scott and doing, goofy stuff that you do when you're in your 20s at San Diego Comic-Con. And it was so long ago.
I know. We're kids, man. I have some photos. I've got like Tupperware binder in my studio of old photos. I'm talking about analog photos, kids, like actual print photos. And we look like we're like 15 years old.
Oh yeah. I always had the Chicago Bears hat on backwards. I remember that. Yeah. And the only hair I had that like little whatever the hell that is, that little soul patch thingy right there. Yeah.
It's funny
yes.
Just to see everyone's like fashion and like t-shirts, just logos of
huge logos.
What band was I so passionate about at that time? So I had to have the shirt or whatever.
Exactly.
No, man, it's the cool thing about it is like everyone who I met during that era of paying dues with doing comics, self-publishing, starting with Oni. It's like I'm still friends with everyone because I think it's a serious way to bond with people. It even when you're young, it takes a certain level of commitment and discipline to do what we even did, to even pursue this thing.
Oh, absolutely.
The fact that you got in, 30 years ago is it's astonishing, man. There's one of my collabs with Scott Morrison.
With Scott, yeah. Because you were an only double feature, and you did King Zombie or Zombie Kid, yeah, which is on the cover with Little Gray Man, which was Scott's guy, and I think I have one page in that.
Yeah, dude, no, you've got like 4 or 5. There's a 4 or 5 page sequence in this where you
is there
do a bunch of like roosters and chickens on and like tentacles and psychedelic stuff. There's like a spread and a couple other stuff, and Scott and I were working on the book, and we're like, let's leave a section where we can just send it to Nixey and have him do some crazy shit.
I remember that.
This is actually like the 3 of us in this book,
I gotta dig that out. I know I still have a copy of that kicking around, but I remember that now. Yes, the chickens and rooster. I don't know. I can't remember the context of it at all, but that's pretty funny. So
really,
sorry, go ahead, Jim.
A real fun project to do, obviously.
Yeah. Well, and that's when like with Bob was still there, wasn't he, at that point?
Good question. He might have left. I remember him only being there for like 2 years, right?
Yeah, it wasn't very long. Yeah, and then he went over to DC.
Yeah.
But they were still really cool with doing fun stuff, and I'm not saying they're not now, but just sort of when it really started up, they were really open to this kind of thing.
Yeah. Man, after Bob left, I'm going to say in like 99 or so, 2000 maybe, I stuck around with Oni for maybe just another year or so. And then in 2001, I met Jim Valentino, and I brought all my creator-owned stuff over to Image because Jim just sort of offered me a better deal. And Oni was always great, but I remember a couple distinct things changing as soon as Bob left.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember this, but I remember the quality of the paper in their books dipped down in quality to save money, and they were paying a set rate per issue for their artist.
Yeah.
Figure dipped down just a little bit too as soon as Bob left. So there's a couple of signs for me where I was like, Shrek is the one who brought me into this. He's gone. I feel like things are changing just a little, even though I really like James Lucas and I like Jamie Rich and really good guys. I just kind of figured I was brought in by Bob. Like we were Bob's boys.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because, I never really talked about what happened with Jenny Finn there originally, but that drop in paper quality was a huge factor in us not finishing it there. And along with the rates thing, because they were sort of giving us a flat rate per issue, and then that did kind of drop, and I remember just being so angry about the paper quality because I was doing such fine line work, and it just would not have held up on that paper at all.
Yeah, man, I remember having a phone conversation with you, and enough time has passed that we can mention it. I don't think we're hurting anyone's feelings.
No.
I remember having a phone conversation with you when that was happening and how upset you were. And it was just so strange because it was in the middle of this epic, incredible, groundbreaking work you were doing. And the both of us were kind of like, I think it's time for something else. I think it's time to go, or it's time to move on, or something like that, but it's publishing, man. I mean, these things happen.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and it is, and that, I mean, that's exactly it. It's just a big thing of what we do is just being adaptable if you want to survive. And, when we got into comics, there certainly wasn't the avenue for distribution like there is now, just in terms of different platforms. Like, so many people doing stuff digitally now. And it would have been interesting if that had existed for us when we were younger, because we were really keen on doing different stuff. And I remember one year in San Diego, and I won't mention any names because I can't remember them, but remember we were going to do like sort of limited animated projects and stuff like that, and I can't remember if they threw any. I was sort of late to that. Did they ever throw any money at you and Scott? They did, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then
it was oh God, I can't even remember the term for it. It was like it was .com money, early
yeah.
.com. A guy from the Bay Area had formed a new Flash animation studio and basically hired Scott and some of Scott's friends as consultants and producers on that.
Yeah.
And they gave like me money, China Clugston money, and I was going to do Girl Scouts as shorts for them. But it was crazy, man, because Alan Spiegel actually supervised those contracts for all of us as well.
Oh, okay.
So I did get paid. Nothing came out of it. It was just a guy, a rich dude from the Bay Area who had money. So
those guys still exist too. Yeah, it was interesting because I think that if it was now, that potentially would have gone further. That like with the different avenues. So yeah, it's just like I said, it's like being adaptable and sort of coming in and out of things. It's why you and I are both here, is that we've been able to really go with the flow and take the punches and throw some back. So certainly you have done that in your career. I mean, not only developing, where you started to where you are now, and you certainly can look at your early work and look at what you're doing now and tell that, oh yeah, okay, I can see this was done by the same guy. But I mean, there's just been so much development over the years with you to where you are now. And like, I always hold you up as like the shining example when I tell younger artists, like, just really lean into what you want to do. Like, find your voice isn't about, growing up, we all learn from different people, that inspire us or whatever. But when we start developing our own voice, the best and quickest route is just to really lean into what you want to draw, and then you'll figure out how to draw it. And and you have really, really, really done that.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's pretty obvious, like the things I'm interested in and the styles and influences that I've kind of incorporated in my work through the years. And I think it's interesting, man. I think one of the things of being a good artist is also having great taste, unique taste. Like, what are your reference points for what you're putting into the stew of what is you? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, so since I was a little kid, I mean, I became very obsessive with certain comics and art styles and listening to certain types of music that affected my mind state when I was working, when I'm making images. Movies, animation. It's kind of like, I'm always interested when I meet creative people that I like and respect. Well, what are you into? Like, what's your favorite shit? Because that really tells a lot about someone and what their approach is. And because we're all filtering in this stuff that we dig, and then we're processing it in us, and then it's coming out, but with our own little secret herbs and spices on it.
Yeah.
In the form of what you're trying to express, a drawing, a film, a painting, whatever you're making. And that to me is almost like a lifelong journey of like, my style will never be complete. My style will never stop changing in a way, because I'm always discovering new things and taking new things in, and it's affecting the way that I'm thinking about making images. And I'm assuming you're kind of that way too, because your work keeps changing and improving and becoming something more,
Yeah. And it's the big thing for me is what I fought with for a really long time. And because I bought into the whole bullshit line that you're not supposed to appreciate and like your own work. And I bought into that for years until I one day realized, well, if I don't like my own stuff, how is someone else going to like my stuff?
Right.
Why am I bothering to do it? Like, why am I putting myself through such torture creating if I'm not enjoying it? And so what I did is I was able to sort of separate the enjoyment of what I'm trying to create and the process of creating it, and still being able to have a critical eye at the end of the day, where I'm not just patting myself on the back and I'm like, oh, good job, it looks amazing, there's no growth to be had here, you know. And when I did that, when I learned to appreciate and enjoy the process of it, it really allowed me to challenge myself more. It's like, oh, okay, I'm really enjoying what I'm doing here. You know, like, how much further can I take it? Where can I push it now? You know, and so I'm really, really digging it. And it was even just a couple of years ago where I really just accepted the fact that I needed to stop trying to impress everybody and just do what I want to do.
Yes.
And that's the thing. So I really, really enjoy creating now. Like, when I sit down, like, I'm really enjoying the process of it. And it's like, where can I take it now? You know, and so it's been really allowing me to keep pushing, like I said. So, you know, I will pat myself on the back here a little bit, because the people, you know, some friends have said, it's like, oh, you've kind of leveled up recently. And it's like, yeah, I allowed myself to do it. You know, like, I kept pushing. I pushed through because I allowed myself to. So yeah,
you should pat yourself on the back, man. I mean, because just look at this Hulk piece. This is absolutely insane. It's the way that you and a handful of other artists have elevated the commission game. I mean, I've already told you this, but I'll say it publicly. It's like, these aren't even commissions anymore. I mean, these are fine art pieces done with ink on paper. But if you blew this up to like 6 feet tall, this could be framed and hanging in an art gallery or museum. You know, it's do you remember when we were kids? It was like a commission was like a marker drawing on a backing board.
Yeah.
For like $20.
Yeah.
These are full-blown illustrations. I mean, they're absolutely gorgeous works of art. And meeting you when you were doing the Trout stuff and Jenny Finn, I thought you were completely unique and on your own level then. And seeing where it's come to like this level of this piece, it's just a really, I'm super excited and proud to be part of the journey of even knowing you, dude. Because this is like an artist's journey being displayed in front of us, you know.
I appreciate that, and you know, when you showed us all the commissions you've been working on, and it's what's been really interesting in the last year or so I've been working with Cam is learning about sort of the commission collector end of things, because it's not like comic publishing at all. It's uniquely its own thing, and there's a really high appreciation for unique voices and like, you know, and creators who are willing to really put in the elbow grease and put in all that work for a finished piece. And, you know, I really take it as an honor that someone is willing to pay me to tackle an image for them. And so, you know, I'm going to give them everything I got. And I love to see that you have really taken that on and tackled that too. Cause like the pieces that you're doing are just like, you remember you're showing Sean and Tommy and I, and we're just like, what?
Thank you. Well, I mean, man, just having to I don't feel like I'm in competition with anyone, but I see what like you and Matt Allison, what the two of you guys are doing. It's like, do I have to be in this range of like, but then, you know, my whole thing is like, well, no, you're you and you've always done you. just do you. I mean, that's what the clients are doing. They're hiring you for a commission to be you. They don't want it to be something else, but the inspiration, I'll say, from guys like you has definitely affected my approach to it, which is a positive thing. So it's not a competition with me. It's more like, I'm going to do what I'm going to do, but I feel like I just need to step it up in a way, you know.
Yeah.
If I'm going to be in the arena as some of these people that are doing this, it's like the game has been elevated, man. But it's exciting to see, you know.
Yeah, and I love that, because I mean, I think that, like, I've got to know Matt pretty well in the last probably 8 or 9 months, since I know him a little bit, I think, on Facebook, but more on Instagram. But then when he came and started working with Cam, like, I was chatting with him more, but then he started working with Cam, and then we've been chatting a lot, and so we really sort of see that as like, there's no half-assing what we're doing, and you know, and nor are you bringing your A game, and I think that's what it is. Is it's like, and it is kind of pushing one another in that sort of healthy competitive way, because when I see what you're doing and I see what he's doing, and it's like, oh, okay, you know, it's like, okay, what's my next one going to be? What am I going to do for, you know, the next one out? So it's awesome. Like, I'm really enjoying it. I am missing comics, and I have actually started on some comic stuff, which is why people haven't seen any commission updates, although I'm back on commissions now. But yeah, like, but then being able to sort of bring some of what I have done in commissions and then bringing that over to comic work. So it's been really organic and really amazing. Like, there's been a real push in what I've been doing in the last 6 to 8 months for sure.
That's awesome. Yeah, well, I was going to say, now I really want to see your next comics project based on what you've been doing with the commissions. I don't want to assume anything, but I don't know if you're going to be doing every single panel in a full-blown comic book, this level of detail.
Not quite that crazy. So,
but I'm assuming it's affected just your overall approach.
It has.
You know,
I'll show you and Cam after. Sorry, everybody else, but I'll show you and Cam after we're wrapped up here. But I guess I got a couple pages sitting in front of me. So.
Oh, nice. Okay, and then that's something you're writing as well.
Yeah, it's just this really, like, and this is where, because I'm not sure what I'm going to do with it. I might Patreon it. Like, I really like what Ed is doing, where he's just putting out a couple pages a week, and I think he's putting some like work in progress stuff. I'm not sure. I have to ask him what else he has on there, but I really like that approach, and so I think that I might do that when I have enough pages done, where I can put a bunch of, like, a chunk of pages, 12 or 15 pages up first, and then 2 pages a week, basically, till I'm done. And it's just this really surreal, weird body horror thing.
Oh,
and
nice.
yeah, it's just, and like I said, like, this, it's just 100% me leaning into, you know, what I want to do, which is exciting. And I'm not trying to convince anyone who's on the fence about my work to come over and take, you know, a chance. If you like my stuff, you'll like this. If you don't, you won't.
Yeah, that's the most direct and logical way to do it. I think, especially too, if you're doing indie comics, you're writing and drawing your own stuff. It's kind of how I'm approaching the new Girl Scout series I'm working on, where I'm just doing it the way I want to do it, man. And it's the same thing you just said, where it's like, if you like my art, you like Girl Scouts, this is what it's going to be. It's not something completely different, but at the same time, it is different than the last series in that it's evolved a step up, and I'm even doing the lettering and the coloring on this one. Whereas the previous series, I had a colorist, Justin Stewart, who's brilliant. I love working with him. But the new series, I was like, I'm just going to do it old school style and just literally do the whole thing myself. Like lettering, coloring, and just make it happen that way. you know.
Well, and it's interesting because, and do you see that as a result of sort of what's happening in the comic business right now, where like we've talked to Sean about this too, where all of a sudden there, with what happened during COVID and with what happened with Diamond, it was a bit of an eye opener. And so it has pushed some creators back to sort of that old school mentality of, well, I'm just going to do it like I used to do it back in the day and do it completely on my own. And I mean, I'm sure you're going to go with True Image with this again, are you not? Or
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, but just that mentality of building from the ground up all by yourself.
Yeah, I think it's all that what you just said, and I also think that I don't know if it's nostalgia, just the age I'm at now, but I found myself in the last couple of years really going back and appreciating and falling in love again with that idea of just straight up indie underground comics, or outlaw comics, as the kayfabe guys call it, of just celebrating and really glorifying singular visions in this art form of you're the creator, writer, artist, letter. Literally, you can just make a thing and put it out yourself in a physical form of a printed book and say, this is me. This is my vision. This is what I want to do. This is how I want it printed. This is the paper it's on. This is, and with digital printing now and everything, it's like there's so many options of what we can do that it's almost more of a welcome and inviting time to be a singular creator now than ever before.
Yeah.
So it's all these different factors, man. But I think there's something in the zeitgeist right now of comics, to me, of like the mainstream stuff, Marvel and DC basically, is so far removed from anything I'm interested in or anything I'm looking at, that it's almost like it's a separate thing again. Like when I was a kid in the 90s and it was like, it's mainstream versus indie comics.
Yeah.
It's almost, and I don't dislike any of that stuff, but I'm just saying, I'm just like way, way, way over here now of like, no, man, I want visionary singular works from fantastic artists and creators. And that's I think your head is there as well.
100%. And so I talk about this with a lot of people, and I'm certainly not begrudging anyone that still reads Marvel and DC. I think there is a lot of nostalgia connected to that. But, then when we were coming up, we were getting Miller doing, Batman Year One and long runs on Daredevil and stuff like that. And that just isn't happening now.
Yeah.
I think that those really strong, unique voices are doing comics. They're just not doing them for Marvel and DC.
Right.
And so I think that people are sort of finding perhaps Marvel and DC aren't living up to what they used to do. And it's like, well, because they're not putting out those books anymore. And I'm sure that there's a lot of corporate pressure from the top down about putting out those kinds of things. Like, does Dark Knight Returns come out in 2020? I don't think it does.
I know. I don't know what their ability to take risks is at this point. I mean, obviously the movies change the whole game for them as far as
100%,
corporate IP goes. That's why, for me, comic books as an art form is one of the best visual things you could be involved in, because your budget is just your tools and your paper.
Yeah.
So it's like, if you have a vision, you can make this singular thing happen. And while I'm working on the Girl Scouts comic by myself, I'm also doing this Girl Scouts animated pilot that I can't say much about, but the opposite thing of like, I have to work with a whole team on this, and it's a completely collaborative thing because we're trying to make a cartoon show. So that's something completely different. So it's been nice this year having this interesting balance with the same IP, where I kept the print rights, and so I can always write and draw the comics. And if we do something in another medium, that's the collaborative part.
Yeah.
So
Well, that's what I found with film too. Like I really loved the collaborative aspect of that, but there's something so unique about comics where you can sit down with a blank piece of paper and some tools and time and come out with something that is uniquely you. The only, I know I've said this before, so I apologize to people that have heard me say this, but the only other parallel that I can think of is music. Where someone can sit down with an instrument and whatever they're using to record it and just make music.
Yep.
From nothing. And I always think that it's really, really incredible. And that's why I think comics doesn't get its sort of fair shake sometimes, because I think a lot of, in North America anyways, just because of sort of, Marvel and DC really, people like the layman, people outside of who don't really read comics only think of comics as superhero comics. To me, it's the same thing. It's like, you say, television. And they're like, oh yes, I really love soap operas. It's like, well, yes, there's a lot more on television than soap opera, but they don't know about what else comics has to offer.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, the stigma of comics in America is still superheroes. It's still what people think of. When we were doing conventions, I did a lot of conventions and big shows, Emerald City, New York. The general feeling and the general thing that the public still gears toward, is attracted to at the shows, is the superhero stuff because they know it through the movies. So when I set up at the big shows, man, I kind of know going in there that like 90% of the people that walk into this convention center are probably not going to resonate with my work. But 10% that do really dig it. And those are the people that have the good record collections and are into weird, bugged out movies.
Yep.
And those are my kind of people. And those are the people that come up to my table and we have this exchange and I understand where they're coming from. It's not the average family that are all wearing like matching Deadpool hoodies that stop at my table. And that's fine with me. That's okay. And it's cool that I guess comics is big enough now that it's like the Deadpool family can have their fun and buy their Marvel trinkets and whatnot. And then the weirdos with the good record collections that know about like Jodorowsky movies and stuff can stop at my table and be like, oh, Jim, I love the weird shit. I love this stuff. And they buy a print or something. And so it's become all inclusive in that way where I'm sure you remember, but there was a time in the 90s where all of us as artists sort of had to make the decision of, are you mainstream? Are you indie?
Yeah.
Because there's like a war going on between, and I was originally trying to break in the early and mid 90s as a inker and into mainstream and to whoever would hire me. So I was waiting in lines with an inking portfolio and Huddleston had his penciling portfolio, and we would go to shows and wait in all the lines for Marvel, DC, Dark Horse, who else was around? Sirius or whatever, all these
Valiant,
all these companies. And I was showing literally everyone my work, even like waiting in line at Fantagraphics, knowing Fantagraphics doesn't hire inkers. Like what? No. I'm still waiting in line just to make the connection and get quote unquote professional people to look at my work and figure out what's my next step here. Like what do I want to do? There's a collaborative with Huddleston right there.
Oh, that's awesome.
But did you feel any pressure in that era, or were you just kind of off and running with like the underground?
No, because it was funny so I have a funny story about Sean Chen, who is a really nice guy. I haven't talked to him in years and years and years, but I was standing behind him in line to talk to a Valiant editor who was looking at portfolios. And it was a long line. So he and I started chatting. He was not a professional at all at that point. He was just there. I don't know if he had done conventions or not before, but he was there to show his samples, and I was there to do the same. I can't remember what I was showing at the time. So Sean gets to the table, puts down his portfolio. The editor looks through 3 pages, hands him his business card, and he said, email me when you get home. I have work for you.
Hmm.
So it was the first Sean Chen professional gig he got, and I was standing behind him when it happened. It was really
Right
cool. Yeah, he was stoked, as he would be. And then I showed him my work, and he's like, yeah. He just did not know what to think of it. And then, so I was like, okay, took my stuff back, and I'm like, it was like you later on, but I was like, why did I show him this stuff? Like, this isn't Valiant. Like, what's he gonna, like, it might, I don't know if it was bacon. I don't know what it was. It was weird. Of course it was going to be weird. And I just remember it's like, oh, that's not who I am. Because Sean, I think, had showed him Wolverine pages. So it wasn't even Valiant stuff, but, and this is no knock on Sean or what Valiant was doing. It's just, I wasn't doing what Valiant was doing. And for me moving forward, it's like, oh, that's not me.
Yeah.
Like those, they're not looking for me. I'm not looking for them. I'm going to have to figure this out in a different kind of way. So, yeah, it was just a lot of sort of scratching and clawing and figuring that out. I mean, I was living in the prairies of Canada at the time in Saskatchewan, and you know, there was Tom Grummett was living there at the time. Well, he's still there, but was there at the time, and so he was the big name in Saskatoon. Super friendly guy, very supportive. But I mean, he was like solid DC guy.
Oh, for sure.
And so there wasn't like the equivalent of an indie guy like him in Saskatoon. So if you sort of had that pursuit, you were a little on your own. And so there was no internet then. There wasn't emailing anyone. There's mailing stuff out. And yeah, so it was just a matter of me going, okay, it's not going to be these companies. And I was doing stuff for Caliber and Slave Labor and sort of inching my way towards Dark Horse. Dark Horse was my brass ring, you know. Right. And so Bob was the one that finally brought me over to Dark Horse when I was good enough. And but yeah, it just was this switch, this like light switch being turned on for me, where I was like, oh yeah, no, this isn't who I am at all.
Yeah. Well, not only when you're younger, you're obviously still trying to figure out who you are as a person. Yeah. And then when you're trying to pursue art as a career, you have to figure out, who am I as an artist? Like, what do I ultimately want to do? I'm so glad I didn't make it as an inker, man. I mean, I was trying hard and I was getting a couple things here and there, professional work as an inker. And it just wasn't happening. Mike and I were trying to shop our stuff around together as a team.
Yeah.
And in like 95, we did a Legion of Superheroes story for Showcase.
Which I completely forgot about until you posted that a little while ago.
At DC. And the straw that broke the camel's back, man, was Mike got hired to become the monthly penciler of Deathstroke the Terminator. And I didn't get picked as the inker. And so that's when I started self-publishing Girl Scouts and my own stuff, where I was like, I don't think this inking thing is gonna cut it for me. I'm just gonna do my own shit and see where this goes. And
yeah,
the crazy thing, dude, is I don't remember who it was inking Mike, but this guy was like butchering Mike's stuff on a monthly basis, and it was so heartbreaking to see it. Like, Mike was drawing like 14 hours a day, like insanely detailed backgrounds, and the inker would just like black it out. Just
oh man.
And the comps we were living in an apartment together, and the comps would come to our apartment, and Mike would just take the box and throw it in the trash.
Shit.
He wouldn't even look at the books. And like Dave Johnson was doing the covers at the time on the book. So I would jokingly, when we would get drunk, I'd be like, at least save the Dave Johnson covers. Like, I'd be like, I'm gonna crack open the box, I'm gonna clear it out. He's like, don't you touch that box. He was getting paid and working for DC, but it was this weird, brutally honest moment of us realizing what comics could be.
Yeah.
And it was a good warning sign for me, man, where I was like, I think my place is in the underground, is in the indie DIY, write it, draw it, self-publish it. If you could only afford to print 200 copies, so be it. At least you have this thing that you can put out into the world and say, this is mine. This is the thing that I do. You know, and the exciting thing is if young artists that are watching this now, it's like, you don't have to do any of this waiting in line shit anymore.
No.
Like, just make your stuff and post it online and say that you're a company, and you are a company. People, I'm sure, ask you this all the time. They ask me, like, how do you break into comics? It's like, there's no breaking in anymore. You just
just make comics.
Do your work.
Yep. You make comics, you're a cartoonist. That's it. And that's the beauty of it. And I mean, there's a lot of, and I don't get it, there's a lot of sort of talk about gatekeeping and stuff. And I was like, what gatekeeping is there? I mean, if you're making stuff, then you're making stuff. Like that's it at the end of the day.
Yeah.
I
don't know. Gatekeeping as in
like getting into like, oh, you need, you know, this person is going to help someone else get into the comic industry. And it's like, what do you mean?
You don't need that, people watching.
No, I know. That's what I always say. I go, if anyone brings that term up, run away from them in the opposite direction. And it's like, because it's bullshit. It's just like, and that's what it is this, like, there are people who really created really strong support, like just through platforms like Instagram, and they just sort of find their way that way. And I would say, like, you know, you can be really talented, but you also have to be a bit of a grinder. You know, you have to be a bit of a fighter. And if you got that, you'll figure it out. You'll make your way. And you just like I said, we were saying earlier, like, you adapt and you grow and you change and you figure stuff out. And if you're putting out good stuff, you just keep putting out good stuff, and, you know, you'll continue to build that base support. And you see people now that are doing sort of Patreon to Kickstarter, or, you know, print order stuff, and it's working for them. They don't need what I feel is a very broken sort of publisher to distributor to retailer model that is just not holding water these days. And, you know, you have a better chance of, you know, economically, of making some money just by doing it yourself.
Yeah.
You know, through Kickstarter, through, you know, any of the other ones, you know. And is it Indiegogo? Is that it? Is that one of the, yeah. And you just sort of see more creators dealing directly with the consumers of their work. And I see that growing. I don't see that shrinking. I just see that becoming more of a thing. You know, like creators that are willing to go online and converse with people, you know, whether it be Instagram or Twitter or, you know, Facebook. People still use that, I don't know, but you just see it as a really organic thing.
Yeah, it's interesting because, like, the hustle now has become ingrained with the career, with doing art, like with pursuing art as a job or being a freelancer, you know.
Yeah.
And hustle was always part of it, but it's even more so now, where it's like you're saying, like, you can craft your own audience and deal directly with them, but that also means that you have to stay on top of being connected with that audience.
Yeah.
You know? I think I do a pretty good job of that, but at the same time, there's days where it's like, I just can't answer every DM on Instagram or every comment, or that's the direct link with the people. But there's days too where it's like, well, I have to do the work. Mm-hmm. So always finding that balance of hustle, work, making the thing, and then promoting the thing. And it's interesting to see how every artist has their own approach to that, you know?
Yeah.
And all the guys that are friends of mine that have done crowdfunded books, I've tried to support those books, and I'm always interested to hear from them. Like, how did your campaign go? Like, what did you learn from it? What mistakes did you make? Like, how do you navigate certain things? You know, I've only done this once. I did my pop-up book with my buddy Roston at the beginning of this year, and I was so fortunate because Roston ran the Kickstarter.
Yeah.
Well, we set it up together, but he researched all the dude, you have to research everything. Like, how much do the boxes cost to ship?
Yeah.
The shipping, international, all these crazy details. And he managed and ran our campaign like a champion. And when I saw how much work it was, it blew my mind. And I talked to Jim Rugg after his Octobriana campaign.
Well, I saw the photo of like the flat of comics that showed up at his house.
Boxes and him and his wife ran it like champions. They did it, but he was just like, it's a shitload of work. It's insane. Yeah. And
well,
but again, it's like, you're eliminating, if you can do that and get through it, you're eliminating all this middleman bullshit of. Yeah. Unfortunately, I mean, you mentioned it earlier, but the system of distributing comics is a broken system, right? We have to say it.
Yeah.
And I don't see anyone coming along to offer a solution to this. And that is troubling, man, because I love comic shops. I want to support brick and mortar comic shops. And I don't ever want them to go away.
Yeah.
So, but the system that delivers the product into these shops is not right.
No.
So what can someone just come along and save this system?
Well, and it's in talking to a retailer recently and just hearing him talk about how DC really hung retailers out to dry as well. And it sucks because there's a lot of really, really amazing comic shops out there in North America, and you see how hardworking these owners of these shops are, and how, you know, when COVID hit, how smart and how quickly they adapted to it to keep their stores going. And you just started to see like with no support from the distributor whatsoever. It's like, we're not shipping anything, we're not accepting anything, we're not paying anyone. It's like, what?
I know. There's got to be a better way, man. I mean, I don't know if you and I are the guys to figure that out.
Probably not. But
there has to be some sort of business model or some way around this.
Yeah. Well, I know that like Andrew McLean, it has kind of a cool thing going with Escape Pod Comics where like he's sort of acting as a distributor for some of Andrew's stuff. So you can order Andrew's stuff through that store. And it's that is really smart. Like, that's really cool. I mean, that is a lot more work on both their ends, but it's cutting out the nonsense, right? Like that's what we're talking about, you know, and going from, you know, creator to where you want your stuff at the end of the day. If you're not putting it out yourself, you know, you want it in comic shops. And so I saw that and I was like, oh, that's really cool, you know? Yeah. And so there, like, that's sort of one avenue. I don't, it like I said, it's more work for both, but at the end of the day, it's getting your books to a really amazing comic shop. So yeah.
It's still important to me. And I don't know, there's gotta be a way, but coming from self-publishing and indie sensibility, I still like the idea of like, I can make stuff and put it out myself. Did you self-publish things in the beginning to get your first professional work, or did you just
no
examples?
Yeah, I used the mail. So back in Amazing Heroes, the back of Amazing Heroes, they used to have they used to have all the addresses for the publishers. So I just stuffed envelopes big envelopes and sent a whole bunch of packages out to everybody that was listed in the back.
Wow.
And so I was fortunate because my parents were really supportive of me in my creative pursuits. So they certainly would have helped in that regard. Because I graduated high school early. I only did one semester in grade 12 because I knew what I wanted to do. So I got the hell out. Graduated out the door. And
your grades were great.
Yeah, fine. Yeah. So like if I ever had to go back to university, I could have. Like I was an A and B student, it was fine. But like school was just getting in the way of me being a comic book artist. So yeah, I just sent packages out. My parents let me basically live there for another 3 or 4 years after high school because they're like, look, you don't have to go to university, so consider this your time in university. You can stay here and try to make a go of this. And of the 25 packages or so that I sent out, I got 3 or 4 positive responses. And at the end of the day, you only need one to get going.
Right.
And I wasn't very good, but that was 91. So the black and white, comic thing was still rolling. And my first publisher was actually Fantagraphics, but it was Monster Comics, which was a subsidiary company of Fantagraphics.
Right.
Back when they were doing Eros and stuff like that. So yeah, and after that, then I just started doing stuff with Slave Labor and Caliber. Like I did a big run on Dead World. Like people don't know, people forget that. And
wow,
yeah, I did all sorts of shit back then.
Penciling and inking, or
I did pencil ink some of it, and then I was just penciling. When they relaunched Dead World, I did 4 issues of it, and I just penciled it. I didn't ink it.
Wow. Okay.
Oh no, that's wrong. I inked it then. See, it was so long ago. I did ink it. Yeah, I did ink it. Yeah. Some of it bounced around, but yeah.
Page rate or
yeah, but not much of one. But there was. Yeah. So
$20 a page, kid, or something.
Yeah. I think that's what I was getting for Bill the Clown was something like that. Yeah.
That's
like $25 a page. Yeah.
I got to I met Phil Hester and Andy Parks when I was like 15 years old. They're Kansas City guys at the time, and I was in St. Louis. I met them at a show, and Phil was doing a book at Caliber called Fringe, which Paul Tobin was the writer of. And Phil, when I was like 16, 17, Phil started sending me just pages to do like background inks on.
Wow.
It wasn't any money, but he was like, hey, dude, if you want experience, like if you want to like fill in blacks and ink some backgrounds and stuff, he's like, I can send you like 5 pages at a time on certain issues if I'm in a time crunch. And I said, hell yeah, because I was just so excited to be working in comics,
Yeah.
Just working on the boards. It was like, there you go, Fringe.
There it is.
It was, I wasn't credited in any of it, but I was ghost inking occasionally for Phil.
That's awesome.
But it was like not even character stuff, dude. It was just all
like buildings and stuff.
Clean up the pages and erase the pencil marks and stuff.
Yeah.
But you have to start somewhere, man. You have to start.
It's true. Well, and we've both done some interesting things because, it's funny talking about Marvel and DC. I've done like 4 pages for Marvel, but I've done stuff for DC. I did the Batman project, but I inked a bunch of Harley.
Yes,
on Huddleston.
Yeah,
I can't even remember how that happened.
Yeah, it's funny. Are those issues like worth money now because Harley is like a big thing? Is there like a demand for?
Well, I know that when they did put out a trade of it, and around the time that Harley was sort of really popular, and I think it did pretty well. Like I got an okay residual check from it, but I don't know if the individual issues or not. I know we still have a few pages kicking around. I'm sure Mike does too. So
yeah, I'm probably Oh, there you go. Oh, is that from?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay. Wow.
It was
remember Mike being very excited that you were his inker, though, because it's like, well, Troy is an ink master, so you know the inks are going to look good.
well, it was so funny because I mean his stuff was so clean, and at that time it was like lots of sharp angles, and so it was sort of working counterintuitive to how I normally ink, which is really kind of organic and free, you know, and loose lines or like little lines. Like there was none of that worked with the Harley stuff. But I think it came out all right. Like I think that it like I just made sure to hit those solid blacks where they needed to be and stuff. So yeah, it was interesting. I cannot at all tell you what those issues were about at all.
No. It's amazing. It's amazing that they exist, though. Like that makes it makes me happy. Mike also did like a full run on Gen 13.
Yeah, that's right.
For a while, that nothing against those issues, but I occasionally find them in like quarter bins.
Yeah,
50-cent bins, and I'll always like take a photo and text it to Mike, and he'll just be like, "Get out of here!" You have to have those building blocks in your career to get to what you want to become. You know, it's interesting because I'm the opposite of you. I've done like 2 or 3 pages, or no, 12 to 15 pages total for DC, and I've done like full issues for Marvel. And Marvel just gravitated more. I'm not sure how that works, but the best stuff, man, is still just my indie, like Girl Scout.
But you've done some cool stuff outside of comics too, where you know your very specific style, your obvious influence of music in your work has pulled some big brands. Like you did those Colt 45 cans.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Yeah, like you've done some. Oh yeah, I remember that. I have that issue.
That's Scotty Young writing and me drawing the one.
One shot. See, stuff like this. I'm just like, would Marvel ever do that now?
I don't know. I'll tell you this much though: the only reason this exists is because Scotty Young, makes Marvel so much money that he pitched them this idea. Like, I want to do this book with Mahfood, and it's what if Howard the Duck was trapped in a human body in an all-animal universe? And I think that they made so much money off Marvel babies or whatever that year. They're like,
yeah,
fine, Scotty, you can do that.
That's hilarious. It's pretty funny though. It's just, and I like that Scotty has always just been Scotty.
Oh, completely.
Yeah.
I cite him as being one of the smartest like business guys in comics. Like with his career, it seems like he's made literally all the right moves throughout and made all the right decisions, and he never had to compromise.
No,
that's what it's all about, man. I mean, for me, it's like, sell those Marvel baby covers, dude. Like, just let it happen. You know?
It's just like, let the money flow over you.
I mean, you mentioned Colt 45, and it's interesting because like the majority of the money I make in my career as an artist is as a freelance illustrator comics. So I make these money gigs doing concept design for animation or doing stuff for like video games or advertising or whatever. And then that allows me to still always have like one foot in comics and do the art form that I love, knowing that it's not really going to pay my bills for many years in a row, but it's something that I always want to go back to.
Yeah.
So I like having that balance, man, of work for a corporation for like a month on a freelance project, and then it has a beginning, middle, and an end. You make the client happy, you get paid, and then you can go off and do your own thing for 3 or 4 months of not worrying about where's the next check going to come from. I can start the next comic book series, or I can do this, or I can do commissions now, or so I like having that balance, you know.
Yeah, so what are some of the other stuff outside of comics that sort of really resonated with you that you actually really enjoyed working on at the time? I know that like in advertising, that the art direction can be really heavy-handed sometimes, but obviously you were able to still push through, who you are and what you do with stuff.
Yeah, I've gotten really lucky with the art directors who've hired me and approached me, because I think that all of them know by looking at my work, like, leave this guy alone as much as you can.
Yeah.
Get the sketches where they need to be and approved, but then when it comes to the execution, like, let this guy do his thing. And I did a cool thing with like Nike years ago for their street line. I don't remember what it was called, but it was like a t-shirt design for Air Force One and a basketball line where it was like a silverback gorilla slam dunking a basketball and flying through the air. But the art director was so cool, man. I just showed him really rough sketches, and he was kind of like, how about this? Why don't you just go to ink and color on these, and we'll roll the dice, and if they're great, we'll use them. And if we have to make changes, we have to make changes. But he's like, there it is. And he's like, I don't think I should art direct you through the inking, the coloring, like every phase of it.
Yeah.
So it turned out to be a fun gig. And last year I worked for Fortnite. I did a bunch of loading screens for the Fortnite video game.
Yeah.
It was a huge video game. And same thing, man. The art directors were kind of like, keep it PG rated, no blood, no asses, or whatever. But let's choose the 4 characters for each composition, and then the composition and the final execution is up to you. So having that much freedom, man, for such a big project like that is, I guess I just get lucky with who I'm working with.
Well, it's too, because at this point, you're probably working with art directors who are now younger than you.
Yes.
And so, they're coming at it probably from a bit of a different perspective too, right? Where, from, what they're doing, there might be more freedom from, the top down, like that gap might not be filled with anyone, right? So that they're then allowed to have a little more freedom, because it's everything's marketing now, that's so much the money is made with marketing. And so loading screens are, you already have the users, right. You have the people, so you can have more freedom with this stuff. And you can, because I know Alexis did one as well, a loading screen for Fortnite. And so like that is clearly you being you, like that's amazing.
Yeah, that's a good point. These art directors are younger than me is part of the equation.
Yeah.
I know this because when I talk to them on the phone, I'm like, this kid's like 25. He's here in a position of making cool things happen. And I'm assuming all of them are conscious of our work through social media, right? So if they're scrolling through my Instagram and reading the comments and stuff, they're probably thinking, like I said earlier, oh, Mahfood's a guy that we should just leave alone. Like, let's just let him do his weird thing that he does. And I think the results will be much more successful than heavily art directing him and trying to control him, so man, that's what I dig about the career of freelance is I'm always learning, I'm always discovering new things and figuring out new ways of applying this skill and this style to work, whether it's commercial work or my own personal work or commissions, but it's never like, I've never ever said like, oh, I've got all of it figured out now. Like I have all the answers. It's like that never happens.
Well, it happens with some who aren't just interested in progressing their art. You know, they're very happy with where they are, and you know that's just stale to me. You know, they're not. You know, if you're not constantly challenging yourself, what's the point?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's good that you still have that fire burning, and I think you need that. Like I think you need that. You know, what's next kind of attitude with this. It's like, okay, I like this, but how can I make this better?
Right.
You know?
Yeah. It's also kind of like remaining curious, just in
Yeah.
general in life, like remaining curious and wanting to be exposed to new things, try new things. Some people get set in their ways and they don't want to go outside their comfort box.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I mean, just traveling, man, will change your perspective on things or bring new influence into you of what things you weren't exposed to before. Or, you know, I went to Japan last year, man,
I
and
was going to bring that up. Yeah.
the trip transformed my brain. You know, it like changed. It changed me. It was insane. It was incredible. I can't recommend going there enough. I mean, not right now, but
Well, no. Yeah. My partner and I really, really want to go.
you have to go.
Yeah, like COVID hit, and it's like,
I know.
is anyone going to be able to go anywhere in the next 5 years? But
I know.
we like I just take in so much Japanese media, you know, like Japanese TV shows, anime, manga. I'm reading so much manga now, and it just is a place that I need to go. I want to go to a country that loves comics as much as they deserve to be loved.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's so ingrained in culture over there, and just art and design in general, man. It's just so prevalent and part of their culture that you walk down the street and every 2 feet you're seeing some signage or some design character or logo or something that's like, how did so much creativity come out of one country? How is this possible? Like, how you go into the manga shops and like Mandarake or whatever, and it's just like 10,000 books of manga, and it's like, how is it possible that there's this much creativity? Like, this is insane. And I was with Japanese people, guides, you know, some of the guys that Ed Pisker hooked me up with, friends of his, that I felt so ignorant because I'm like, so guide me through all this. Like, guide me through. And it's like, they're like, how much time do you have?
I know, right?
I have all day and I have all day tomorrow. Like, I will buy you lunch. I'm here to learn. It's a vacation, but I'm also here to learn because my knowledge of manga is like pretty limited.
Yeah.
So being over there for a month, dude, it only scratched the surface of what.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
What are you reading that you're digging as far as manga goes?
Well, I'm reading a lot of Tezuka lately. Actually, that was going to be my book recommendation at the end, but I'll show you now. But I'm reading his biography right now.
Oh, sweet!
And it's done like obviously in manga style.
Oh,
and
that's amazing!
Yeah, so it's incredible. It's just like you learn. I'm just learning so much about this guy, and it's funny. It's sort of his younger years, and he was doing. Oh, what was it? He had something like 18. He was working for like 18 different publishers at one point. And so editors would just come to his house and they would just in groups sit there and wait for him to finish pages. It was just crazy. Like he was just like, he was out of the gate. He's just one of those special creators. I mean, he drew supposedly over 150,000 pages of manga, which I can't even wrap my head around that.
Wow. Yeah, it's visionary to say the least.
Yeah.
And the work discipline over there is obviously
a
whole other thing as well.
Well, and it's funny too because I'm actually, you know, we talked about a while back. We talked about how we're not really into superhero stuff now, but I'm reading some, like I'm rereading Watchmen and actually really enjoying it. And so it's not like I don't like superhero stuff. I'm not finding anything now that comes close to what came out before. And obviously that's a benchmark book, but it just shows what was done. And like Batman Year One is one of my favorite comics ever.
Yeah,
I mean, it's just, not just superhero, but just one of my favorite comics ever. I got that really nice 2-book edition, large. I can't remember what it's called, but the Absolute Year One or whatever it is.
It's actually,
yeah, I know. Mine's right there.
There under the box of stickers.
Yeah.
And there's Mike Mignola's Alien Salvation book right there.
Oh, nice. I just pulled that out. Where's mine? Mine's somewhere too. I pulled it out like 3 days ago.
I'm the same as you. Like I actually love superheroes and grew up on those comics. It's just, I guess what we were talking about earlier, there's nothing current that I'm super excited about, but the medium of like superhero comics from the 60s, 70s, and 80s is still fascinating to me,
Yeah.
Did you finish Preacher?
No, but I was going to bring Preacher up. So I'm on the second trade now because I'm actually reading like a whole bunch of stuff. So I just kind of skip around. Wow. So this is a funny story. I had never read Preacher. I know. And so I think after watching Jim and Ed's video, I can't remember if they did the first arc or what they did, the first trade, but then I remember asking you, it was like, should I read this? Like, is it good? And you're like, yeah, read it. And I love it. I can't believe that it took me this long to read it.
It's one of my favorites, man. It's so crazy because it's like Americana filtered through the lens of a gonzo drunken Irishman.
Yeah.
And it's
see, it's getting crazier in the second trade.
It's perfect. I mean, where he goes with it, man, is just, I think it's an extraordinary piece of work, and Steve Dillon's art is, it's so consistent.
Yeah.
That, I mean, stylishly, like it's not my favorite thing, but he's such an incredibly competent draftsman and storyteller.
Yeah.
For me, my style, is I go off model at times if I'm doing my own comics, and it doesn't matter. It's part of the style. But when I look at his work, the fascinating thing for me is like, how can he be so consistent? Like this is so that's its own school. That's its own school of drawing and storytelling.
It really is.
He maintains it through the series. And for me, it's so opposite of what I do that I have like incredible respect for it.
Well, it's really good television is what Preacher is. It's like HBO television.
Yeah.
And I don't mean that as a slight in the least. Like it really reads like a really well crafted television show. Just even how he where he places his camera, in his panels, like it really feels like television. And it's so engaging because, he draws in this really realistic style. And then when you get to this sort of ultra violence, like it has this like really like, whoa element to it because, they've crafted it so well that it's sort of, once again, it'll lull you into that false sense of security where, you're reading along, you're reading this sort of dynamic dialogue, and then, excuse me, and then all of a sudden there's a knife in someone's hand.
Yeah. In Tulip's hand.
Tulip's hand, yeah.
That reveal, the first time I read it, was spectacular. I was like, oh, this comic book is going to be a ride. This is going to be a journey. And that same realistic approach is sort of Dave Gibbons' Watchmen as well. And when I read Watchmen for the first time, I got the trade in like 1989. I was in 8th grade and I read it. I got it for Christmas and I read it over Christmas break, and it deeply disturbed and impacted me in a significant, very, very significant way, because I thought comics were like Steve Ditko drawing Spider-Man and the monthly Batman comics I was buying. And this took it to such another level. And the drawing was done in such a, I didn't understand the British sensibility necessarily, or the panel structure. I didn't know any of this stuff until later. But just reading it as a kid, I was like, I know this is something different. This is something like monumental.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, and it's interesting, like when you read it the first time, because I was old enough that I remember the big deal of it coming out. And there was a lot of, like, I wish I still had it. There was a really cool Watchmen portfolio that they put out.
Yeah.
And it was this kind of neat slip cover with this little Velcro thing. And it was a huge deal when it was coming out. And I remember at the time buying it, like really being caught up in the fervor of it, but probably not a mature enough comic reader to appreciate what it was and what they were doing.
Right.
And so there were elements of it where I just, it's not that I was confused. Like I said, I wasn't sophisticated enough. So as a result, I was probably bored because I didn't understand the nuance of what they were trying to do. And so reading it, I've only read it, like I'm probably reading it for about the fourth time now.
Yeah.
I think I'm on issue 9 currently. And, you know, with years and years and years of experience under your belt, you really do understand, oh, I know what he's doing here.
Yeah.
And can appreciate it far more than I did the first time when I was, 18 or however old I was when it was coming out, and just going, the drawings are cool, but I like this Rorschach guy.
It's something you have to really get invested in.
Yeah, you really do.
Yeah, it's a challenge. I mean, I love it now because I've read it several times. Same thing with Preacher. Like, I'm jealous that you're reading it for the first time, because we're trying to remember, like, what was the visceral experience of reading that for the first time. And I got all the trades of Preacher and did not flip through any of them. I would just pick
yeah
and read it. And because I wanted that. So many people told me how insane and imaginative and crazy and fucked up that it gets. So I was like, let's just make it that experience. And I had a genuine thrill, going through it. And it's rare that you kind of have that with any piece of entertainment, whether it's comics or a movie or watching anime or something. But
it's really true. It's I mean, so much of it is spoiled for us now because there's just so much available online in terms of like reading interviews or watching trailers or whatever. And, you really have to actively work now to not have things kind of ruined for you, where you can go in really cold. And actually, I'm doing that with Preacher. I'm not flipping through it at all. Like, I finished the first trade and I went back to Red Skull Comics up the road and just bought the second one. I haven't started it yet. I haven't even cracked it. So I haven't looked through it. So I don't know what's coming. And it's really cool just to read something like that. And having that appreciation now as someone who's been doing this for a really long time and seeing a comic created at such a high level and being able to appreciate it raw and brand new is really awesome.
Yeah. Don't flip through it, for sure.
No.
I had an experience recently of I finally got all the original Jack Kirby 70s New God issues, the individual issues.
Wow.
I want the experience of like pretending like I was a kid in the 70s as these books came out, and the artwork beautifully printed on the newsprint and the letters column and the ads and everything. So reading it as a set, it's only 11 issues, but reading it again, man, in individual comic form, I had this crazy revelation with it where it's like a lot of people complain about Jack's writing as being kind of clunky or this or that. But reading it as someone who writes my own comics, reading it again, I was like, so much of this he's writing as he's going along.
Yeah.
As a parent, but to me, I love that because it's this visionary guy who is trying to translate in words and pictures all this crazy shit that's coming out of his brain. And his brain is so powerful and full of all these stories and all these characters and all this imagination that it's almost difficult for him to channel into just one book or one issue or even one panel. So yeah, some of the dialogue gets a little clunky. They speak in like Shakespearean operatic tone sometimes, but for me, it's like so badass because I'm trying to relate to Kirby as the guy making it. And none of us will ever be able to match that imagination. But it's also fascinating to finish each issue and then read the letters columns of like fans saying like, I don't know what's going on. I don't know what this book is about. Or I love Kirby. I don't like Kirby. Or one kid wrote in and was like, this doesn't seem like a very dynamic comic book. And Mark Evanier, who's Kirby's assistant at the time, responds and says, I think you're the only person in the history of the world who's ever said this is not dynamic. Like, we're going to go ahead and disagree with you. Check out the next issue, you know, whatever. But it's so fun to kind of revisit it as an actual just comic book series, you know, because we're so used to living in the world of trades.
Yeah,
now, it's fine, but
it's totally a different dynamic, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, I think that some creators are now, and I certainly was with the latest Trout and the Vinegar Teeth book I did with Damon, where, I mean, the 4-issue run was something we had to do. It was created to be read sort of all at once.
Right.
And but it's a different dynamic when they are collecting like those old like the new guys, like you said, like those monthly books, and it's not the same. Like you don't have that, you know, that's sort of like, oh my God, this is where it's going to end. I got to wait a month for the next issue.
Yeah.
There's something really, really cool about that.
Yeah. Did you, when I was a kid, I was buying monthly Marvel and DC comics just off the spinner rack at the grocery store before I discovered comic shops. And
yeah,
the kayfabe guys talk about this, but that was one cool thing about comics back in the day is you could just blindly buy an issue of like Spider-Man or F or whatever and sort of understand what's going on, because each issue basically had a beginning, middle, and an end. Sometimes you'd have it to be continued, but the model was like, well, no, any kid who's picking this up should be able to sort of understand what's happening.
Yeah.
And there's an appeal to that form of comics.
There is, and I'm certainly not like, I love the sort of graphic novel format, and that's because of so much of what comics have become, and that's, you know, telling those sort of longer form stories over multiple issues that then really are just one book. But there is something really cool about those old Marvel and DC books, and that's probably another reason why you know, people sort of grumble about books now, because it's not that at all. It is definitely a serialized story. It's just like, what, you know, you can't just go and pick up an issue of Thor and expect to know what the hell is going on.
Right.
You know, whereas you could, you know, where you could pick up an issue of Thor, and when Walt Simonson was doing it, and just to enjoy it for the adventure it is. And sure, maybe, you know, there's an asterisk, you know, somewhere where it connects to another story, and it's like seen in, you know, Thor issue number whatever, and you're like, whoa, maybe I'll track that down one day. But it wasn't necessary to read the story. And there was something really kind of magical about that. Like I would never have read ROM if it wasn't at a store, you know, like on a spinner rack at like a grocery store or wherever, or right. I got it in a 3-pack maybe, you know. If it had been in a comic shop, I don't know if it would have drawn my attention, but you know, you read ROM because it's at a gas station, you know, like, I don't know what this is.
There were certain days where it was like, it's either ROM or this issue of like Fraggle Rock.
Yeah.
because I was a Spider-Man fanatic, and some weeks I'd go to the grocery store with my mom, and they didn't have the new issue of Spider-Man. So it was like I'd help her get groceries, and my reward was like 2 comic books or whatever. And
Yeah.
there was no Spidey or G.I. Joe. I would be like, well, I guess I'm trying something new. What do I try?
Yeah.
It was like, oh, FF, Thor. Thor's a frog for some reason. Maybe I should
Yeah.
buy
Yeah.
Batman. Seems cool, you know, but it was that kind of hit or miss. My collection from the 80s is all these hit or miss sort of titles of
Yeah.
like, well, I had Superman for 5 issues in a row, and then I just like lost interest in it or whatever,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, it is funny because when you look back at because I read Thor forever, you know, it just, was it Ron Friends, Tom Palmer, Ron Friends? I can't remember who was drawing it. Like, but there was an artist who was really unpopular at the time, and it was sort of, I think, coming off of Walt. And I remember really liking his work, and everyone was like, "Why does everyone hate his work? His work is great."
Yeah.
It was completely different. You know, it was sort of more leaning to Ramita or something like that. But, you know, it didn't have the kinetic energy of Walt Simonson, but then who does, right?
It's hard to follow those Simonson shoes. Those are big shoes.
Yeah.
Did you get the Simonson Thor artist edition?
No, I didn't. I haven't seen that.
It's amazing, and the last thing in it is the all splash page issue.
Oh, okay. That's awesome.
All the originals, dude, at like
Yeah.
11 or 17, all the splashes. It's insane.
The last artist edition I just picked up, the Bernie Wrightson, I think it's the Artifact edition.
Did you post that?
No, that I haven't posted that one yet. I just got that a few days ago.
Okay.
I did get the Jack Davis one. I tracked that one down on eBay.
That was it. I saw you post that, and I was
Yeah.
like, shit, do I have to get that?
I was really lucky because they're hard to find, and I just stumbled across one on eBay for a pretty good price. So that was a no-brainer for me because I was just like, where can I find one? And I was fortunate. There was someone on Instagram who was going to swap me their copy of it for a drawing. But then I just found one on eBay. So, but he has 2 copies. So if you want one, let me know and I'll hook you up with them.
Okay.
He'd probably do a swap with you.
Oh shit. Okay, I might hit you up about that. The artist editions become like a slippery slope of
Oh yeah,
how much
of $150 to $200.
yeah, that, but also like how much room do I have in my house to stack like for books? It's
For these coffee tables without legs.
yeah. It's but for me, man, like not going out anymore, obviously, or traveling right now. Like I've been treating myself to more like book purchases and inspirational purchases through the year just to kind of stay jazzed about comics and art and drawing in general, because I don't think you can ever have like too much inspiration. So
I 100% agree.
for
Yeah.
me, it is a legitimate thing of like, yes, I need this artist edition in my life because I have to study it at night, and then the next day I'm going to get up and be jazzed about drawing again.
That's right. Well, it's interesting because have those conversations about sort of inspiration and you know, and how it's different when you're younger to, you know, after you've sort of really found, you know, your style anyways. And I mean, I don't look to anybody else now, and I would say the same for you, just like, oh, how does this artist draw this, or how does this artist draw that?
Right.
Now it's just about looking at beautiful artwork and, like you said, like just getting really excited about creating art.
Yes.
And so I just have been surrounding myself with more and more of it. I probably have been reading more comics now than in the last 15 years.
Wow.
You know, and I mean, I probably will never read as many comics as I used to as when I was, you know, when I was a teenager and was just reading stacks of comics a week, you know, it was just everything. But yeah, like it's been nice to really find that groove again of getting excited about that stuff, the medium that we love to work in.
Yeah. And it's so much work that like you have to be excited to do it. Like you can't take any of this. So yeah, at night when I'm done with my drawing, I usually have like a little, almost like a homework session for myself where I'll just sit on the couch and maybe have TV on or music, and I'll just flip through art books or comics just to kind of like fill my head with some imagery and inspiration before I end the day. And I feel like that inspiration is swirling around in my head when I go to bed, and it is having a positive effect on me where I wake up the next day with kind of fresh eyes, fresh perspective, and be like, oh, I get to draw today again. Like drawing is awesome. I like drawing.
Yeah.
Let's get this going. Like, let's do the thing that I want to do. And because otherwise, man, like I can't be one of those like upset, tortured type artists that works like that is not happy. Like I couldn't imagine being not happy in studio.
Yeah, it was interesting. And, we were talking about that earlier about enjoying your work, enjoying the creativity, the process of it. And I remember it was on a really big named artist post. I think it was back on the Facebook days. And he sort of alluded to that. It's, it's like, oh, as an artist, you really shouldn't enjoy and appreciate your own work. And I challenged him on it a bit. And I said the same thing to him, and he's awesome. And, and he responded back, I said, well, if you don't enjoy it yourself, how do you expect others to enjoy it? And he said, oh, that's an interesting angle. And then someone who I didn't know at all, because it's Facebook, stupid people can say stupid things. And he said, well, if you enjoy your own work, then I imagine you aren't very good. And to which I said, feel free to check my page and come back and tell me what you think. And he never did respond. But it's just kind of nonsense like that. Like it's just, but I do think that there is this sort of mentality of when younger creators hear things and it kind of sticks. And I mean, the greatest advice I think you can give is just work hard and find your own path. Like just, find the courage to appreciate what you really want to draw and draw it,
Yeah.
And I think that you can really see that because when people show you their work, it's almost more beneficial to see their sketchbooks because that's where they draw what they really want to draw.
Yes.
Half the time they're putting stuff in front of you and they're drawing what they think the market wants to see or fans want to see. And I'm like, draw what you want to draw. Like draw what's in your sketchbook.
Yeah. My personal favorite work of my own is some of my sketchbook work. That just turned out to be totally unplanned that I think are completely successful. And they were successful because I went into them not having any expectation. I went into them thinking, no one's even going to see this. I'm just going to draw this straight to ink, have fun. Maybe I'm using photo reference, and it comes out like, why doesn't all my work look like this? I'm really happy with it. And it's that pressure of having to make something precious that's like, oh, this has to be a cover. This has to be a commission. There's a pressure that sometimes can get in the way of you being fully loose and fully you.
Yeah.
I always tell aspiring artists, man, like for me, I was always a sketchbook worker. So to me, the sketchbook is invaluable. And that's where you work out those kinks and figure out your line making and what you really want to do. And you don't really want to show anyone that stuff. You don't have to post it. That's just your learning mistake diary that you carry with you. And that's what we did in art school for years, man, before social media. It was like your sketchbook was under your arm at all times. We drew in straight ink, and I would just show it to like Nathan Fox and Mike Huddleston. They were my roommates. Like that, they're the only people I would show. There was no posting. There was no public celebration of it.
Yeah.
This is my weird little book of terrible drawings, and occasionally something in here works.
Yeah.
And show the guys, I think this works. And Mike and Nathan will be like, you're onto something there. Take that and incorporate it into your work, into your style. And then the rest of this stuff, like, just burn, like, but that one page out of 30 is great. And you just reached another building block of what you need to incorporate into what you're going to do with your work.
Yeah. I mean, you do see that in a lot of social media posts where it's like, oh, a few snaps of my sketchbook, and they're like beautifully finished pieces. It's like, yeah. It's not really your sketchbook.
Yeah.
You're just doing really nice drawings in a sketchbook, but it's not a sketchbook.
Yeah. Yeah. However people are able to improve and learn, everyone has their own.
Yeah.
But the sketchbook formula worked really, really well for me.
And it's interesting too, because my stuff is really, like, I go through sketchbooks quite quickly, but I am just working through ideas, and some of it's completely like no one would know what it was except me.
Right.
And it's just a lot of times it's just concepts for layouts or whatever. I'm just trying to find the right angle or whatever, and it won't make any sense. Or if I'm working on a new comic project or whatever, it'll be, I will design a character until I'm like, yes, that's the one. So I'll just draw it over and over and over again, even if it's sort of the same kind of design, and I'll make slight changes, and then it'll just take me in a whole different place. And so there's this sketchbooks that are just pages and pages and pages of heads and stuff like that, until it's like, oh yeah, no, that's the one I like. I like it that it's slightly longer here or more bulbous there, kind of thing.
Yeah. Are you writing in your sketchbooks as well? Like, when you're plotting out a new comic, is that all a loose process?
I do a couple different things. I use Scrivener a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And so, interestingly, like the new project I'm working on has very little dialogue. And so I've been able to just sort of roll with that. Because I've written some screenplays, carrying over some of my movie making experience, like dialogue has become, like, the words have become as important as the art. So I have like probably 5 or 6 projects in different, forms of being finished, of scripts of things where, like, I need to get that really dialed in before I'll allow myself to draw. But right. I'm thinking visually as I'm writing. But so, like, I'll write in Scrivener, I'll write in Final Draft. And so that I have all these files of scripts and stuff. Like, I could honestly stop coming up with new ideas and I'd be fine for about 10 years, I think. Yeah. I think most of us are like that. But with this one, like, I really, really wanted to just start drawing a comic. And so I came up with a concept. I'm like, okay, I'm not going to get bogged down in writing the script first. It's just going to be a stream of conscious weird thing. There will be dialogue, but I'll just deal with it when I come to the scenes that have dialogue. And I've just been doing layouts and just then jumping onto pages. So it's been really cool. It's been a lot of fun just to figure out as I go. Like, I know where I want it to go.
Sure.
Like, I have sort of the overarching idea, and so I'm just, driving the car to get there now. So
that's awesome. Yeah.
So when you're writing, when you're you're working on the new Girl Scouts mini right now, is that what you're doing? Or
yeah.
So, like, when you write, do you sort of tackle scenes at a time, or how do you approach it?
I have notes, and then I have a dry erase board on my wall over here where I'll make notes and then I'll break down what happens in each issue. I know the overall story, and then I break down what happens in each issue and literally like chart that out on a dry erase board on my wall. And I'll have character notes and dialogue notes, but then I usually sit down and actually just start typing up, like, I guess what the script would be for like issue 1. And it's not even a full script. It's just visually I know what's going to happen. So it's mostly just a recording of the dialogue. And then I'll make a little note like, and then they go over here and they walk to a restaurant. And then people get shot or whatever. I kind of like having it, just the action of typing it out sort of informs how it's all going to be structured as well, where it feels like, oh, this is officially happening now. I'm manifesting this into a thing that I'm going to draw.
Yeah.
So that's the exciting part. And then I print that script out and I literally do like my little thumbnails along the side of each printed out page and start drawing. And I mean, man, that's the best thing about writing your own stuff is like I'm still writing as I'm even drawing, where I'll throw in background gags and I'll make changes and stuff. And so I don't think I'm a great writer necessarily, but I think I'm a really good writer for me drawing.
Well, you're a creator, you know. I mean, it's finding the value in the harmony in both words and pictures together. I mean, it's a different thing, and I would argue that you are really, really good at that, because that's what you need to be. Right. So those of us who write and draw our own things, like that's where we need to find the magic in between the two things, so they come together and work harmoniously, rather than overwriting something, you know, which can happen. And so you don't do that. You know, you don't overwrite. You have what you need to tell the story, both with words and pictures, and you know, and you have found a way that makes you uniquely you doing that. So that's sort of the specialness of comics. That's what is so incredible about it.
Yeah.
And that can certainly happen with creative teams, you know, where a writer's working with an artist and they really vibe. But you know, that sort of that system of just handing in scripts and then whoever ends up drawing it, that's kind of where it can fall apart a bit, unless it's a really strong artist to be able to interpret that script and kind of make it what it needs to be.
Yeah. And my thing is more like, if you read my comics, are you willing to go along on this ride with me, where it might not be the most tightly structured thing, like plot wise, but it's more like, do you want to hang out in this world with me and hang out with these characters and have this visceral experience and have fun with it? Some of my favorite stuff is exactly that, where it's like, everyone loves The Big Lebowski, the movie, but they don't ever talk about the plot or the story or the Lebowski's wife gone missing. They talk about the three main characters.
Yeah.
You want to hang out with those characters because those characters are great. You want to be in that world with them for the 2 hours. And the fact that the brilliant Coen brothers made it is just the icing on the cake as well. But I have a certain appreciation for things like that, where plot, story, that's great, but I also am a guy who can respect like just wanting to hang out in a world for a little bit.
Yeah.
And I know my strengths and weaknesses, and I know like some of this plot might not all connect, but I think I'm delivering so hard on the experience and the visceral and the style of it that my fans are willing to come along for that ride. Yeah, if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, and that's it. And well, one of the things I always appreciated about Ed is that he always says there's no one way to make comics. Mm-hmm. You know, there's no formula. There's no perfect way. There are, you know, there's suggestions, but there's certainly no hard rules. Like there's things that I will always respect the page turn, and I will always respect the 180 rule, just because that got ingrained in me when I directed, and it just so it allows you to do more weird things if you actually sort of adhere to the 180 rule. But other than that, like, all bets are off, you
Right.
know. And it doesn't, it can literally be whatever you want. And when you're sort of pushing things in different areas and doing things where maybe you're not adhering to you know proper script writing rules or whatever, like, the hell with it, right? I mean, do you?
Yeah. There are times though where I'm like, I should actually just take a script writing course, or I should like uh, figure out. But I mean, that is one of the advantages of like YouTube and stuff, is you can literally just go to YouTube and enter in like story structure 101, and it's like, here's how you tell a basic story. I know how to do that. It's just it's a juggling act of like I guess balancing all this stuff when you're trying to make a piece of work. And when I'm drawing the thing, I'm always having a blast, but I'm always having to go back and read everything and look at it as a whole and figure out like, okay, does all of this make sense?
Yeah.
If it veers off into something weird over here, is it okay if it veers off and sort of doesn't make sense for a while? It's a fine line, man, of trying to figure out like how and when do you lose people?
Well, and I think it's and I do it all the time. I think it's perfectly okay to challenge your readers. I know that it goes against everything that Marvel Comics believes in, and is sort of has taught a lot of readers how to read comics. And so I don't spell out everything in my books. I expect a certain amount of paying attention, because working with Dave Stewart on the Trout miniseries, I put in very specific color storytelling elements, and they're kind of subtle in places. Like, you have to pay attention, like you have to connect the dots. And if you're reading it as a whole and absorbing it, it works. But if you're trying to read Trout like you would read the latest issue of whatever, it's not going to work. Like, it's not a comic that's meant to be read on the can in 3 minutes.
Yeah.
And so I was getting some pushback with Trout, with people like, oh, it doesn't make sense, it's confusing, it jumps all over. So I was like, it doesn't. And so I went and asked a couple people who I didn't really know very well, and one of them reviewed Trout, and I said, explain Trout to me, and he did. And I'm like, yeah, exactly. So it's not confusing. You just read it how it was meant to be read.
Yeah.
And so I think that's good, because we get that in every other media. We get that in novels, we get that in music, we get that in television, we get that in what am I missing? Movies? Did I say movies? Anyways, we get it in all of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, theater. But it's almost like people resent, not people, some readers resent it when you do it in comics, where it's just like, look, I'm expecting you to do a little work here when you read this.
Right.
And it's totally fine.
Yeah. I've always thought like it's not the artist's job to like hold people's hands through the experience of absorbing the art or reading the book or looking at the drawing, or it's like, I'm not going to explain my drawing style to you.
Yeah.
You can interpret it the way you want, but I have had people at mainstream conventions just kind of look it through my portfolio and have that look on their face. And I know what they're thinking, and I know that they only read modern, like Marvel or DC comics. And
yeah.
What is this? What? But it's interesting that style and art can have that different effect on people. It keeps it exciting to me.
Yeah. Well, and too, like, you have a very sort of visceral, strong fan base. Like, they really love your work, and that's always nice to have that engagement with people, rather than just like scrolling through and, the hearts are nice, but the comments are better. You know, and so you can have that engagement and see what people are thinking a little bit more than you know, just the scroll in the heart. So yeah, it's been good too, because like looking at a lot of younger artists coming up, for one, they seem to be able to draw better than, you know, I certainly did at their age. And it's bananas. I don't know what's in the water these days, but holy moly.
Yeah.
But there are some really, really amazing younger artists, and it makes me really happy because they're coming at comics from a different angle than you or I did. You know, it might not be from comics at all. Like, you know, maybe they were really into anime or looking, you know, at other things, you know, and got into comics. And yeah, there's just some really, really incredible, unique creators out there these days.
Yeah. It's exciting, man. I mean, all these kids grew up with the internet and with like deviant art and stuff. So they were
Yeah.
at all this good stuff from day one. Whereas for us, I mean, we had to search for that good stuff.
Yeah.
And, you know, we didn't have YouTube tutorials. We didn't have, you know, I didn't even see like how to draw comics the Marvel way until I was in my 20s. And by then I was like,
It's too late. I'm going to draw Marvel comics my way.
I'm in college now, and Mike Huddleston's my roommate. I'll just look because he's like a master, basically. I got lucky because I had two close friends that were both better than me. And so just through osmosis, through being around them and seeing how they worked and how they approached their work and conducted their studio and what materials they were using, it was kind of like, okay, I think I can figure some of this out, but I'm going to do my own twist on that.
Yeah.
I'm never going to be as good of a draftsman maybe as these guys or have the anatomy or perspective, but I think I can do something different, which is be more bugged out, be more like way over here.
There's an energy to your work that very few creators have. Like it just like your stuff like jumps off the page and punches you in the face.
Yeah.
And I love that about it. It's just like there's like every time your stuff will pop up in my feed, like I just get really excited, you know. And it's just, but you're also really prolific. Like you draw a lot. Like you're drawing all the time.
Yeah, I love it though. I have a severe case of graphomania. I'm sure.
Yeah.
Where even if I'm not doing a piece or working on a comic or whatever, it's like I have to make marks on paper.
Yeah.
I don't know if you feel that way, but even if it's just I'm on the phone and I'm just doodling or I meet someone out or whatever, not so much this year, but I'll just be drawing.
Yeah, if I go, it is probably true of you as well. If I go like a couple of days without drawing, I get really grumpy. I feel really bad for my partner.
Does she notice and is like, get back into the studio?
No, I notice it though. But she's really good though. She's really supportive of all this. So but yeah, like just like if we go out of town for something or whatever, like if we go to visit my folks or whatever, I'll have to bring something to draw. And even if I'm just drawing squiggles, yeah, you just got to do something on a piece of paper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so strange compulsion in a way, but it's made me develop a style that responds to the need to make marks and make those marks exciting in a way that that's just become my brand, as cheesy as a word that is, or a way to describe it. It's like standing out became more important to me than being like the greatest. I never had aspirations like I'm not going to be the best. I don't even know what that means. I'm not really a person, but I want to do better than what I did yesterday. So it's more like I'm always in competition with myself and And I don't know if you're the same way, but seeing how you've improved, man, it seems like you're conscious about trying something different and elevating the bar.
Yeah, so that was, I'm thankful for the opportunity to start doing commissions, because that's sort of where it really started to roll with me. And it was when I did the Frankenstein's monster in the Wolfman in their racing get up, where I sort of said, okay, this is now the benchmark to get to every time, and then push past.
Right.
And that's where I felt like I turned a corner with things, because I went into that penciled. I'm like, I have no idea how I'm going to ink this. And then I just started going in and feeling more comfortable, with the Zebra fine line pen that I had been using for a while. And it's like, okay, let's just see how much texture and tone I can get in this. And that's, and then it just came out the other end where it's like, okay, I'm really happy with this. Push further. Where can I go now? And now it's been a matter of sort of push too far, pull back, finding those happy mediums now. And it's been really fun to do that. And then, like I said, translating it to comics, where obviously I'm not going to that extreme, because it would take me 5 years to do 20 pages of anything. But at least in terms of finding a line quality in my comic stuff where I'm happy with it, without all the extra sort of texture and stuff. But
are you photocopying your pencils of these commissions before you ink them, or like scanning them? Are you?
Oh no! So I pencil on a separate layer.
That's right. Okay.
Yeah. So I ink everything on a light pad now. So
okay. So you have two separate pieces out of each piece.
Yeah, like my pencils, I keep all my pencils. So, but I consider the inks the final piece. Like it's
for sure.
Yeah.
But have you ever started inking one of these pieces and not been happy with the inking and just gotten rid of that piece of paper and put a new one on top? Or?
Oh yeah, so there's and I've also abandoned drawings as well. I certainly have. Which one was it where I started like 3 different times? I was not finding my way in. I'll always sort of work on an area that, like, everything's important in the piece, but one area that is not the focal point, and that'll always be my way in. And 9 times out of 10, it's the bottom left-hand corner.
Yeah, you're telling us that.
Yeah. And so, and I could not find my way into this piece. And so I abandoned. I've abandoned it 3 times before I finally did. And then recently there was a commission that I started, and it was an artist choice commission. And I got probably 2.5 days into it, and I was not happy at all. And I just completely abandoned it. And I'm starting on a new idea, a new piece now that I'm really happy with how it's going. So just going to keep running with that. So, but I with commissions, especially now, because I've sort of decided that I'd rather have a smaller body of really high quality work than a larger body of work that I could have done better.
Right.
And the commissions are sort of guiding me now with that. It's really pushing me in terms of where I want to go with things. And so, I made a promise to Cam and to everyone that gets a commission from me that you won't get a piece from me unless I'm like happy with it.
Yeah.
I guess I'm really satisfied with it. So
absorbed into it.
Yes.
I'm glad that you said that you sometimes abandon things, because there's been a couple of the commissions where like I just didn't get it on the first go around.
Yeah.
And I was like, shit, okay, let's destroy this and try again. And it's good to know that like fantastic artists aren't like immortal in a way. Like I was
Yeah.
a couple of years ago with Sienkiewicz, and I just asked him flat out. I'm like, okay, it's Bill Sienkiewicz. He's a genius, right? And I just straight up asked him, like, do you ever fuck up a piece? And he was like, oh yeah, all the time, man. He's like, it's always a challenge. It's always a challenge. I'm like, still? Like you being Bill Sienkiewicz? He's like, yeah. There's pieces that they come out and they work out and they're great. And there's other pieces that are a week-long struggle that I just don't know what's going on anymore. And that to me was like so reassuring to know that, okay, even a living master always just wave his magic pen or whatever in studio and create these instant masterpieces. You know?
Well, I always think that, and thank you everyone for their nice compliments here in the comments. I don't want people think we're ignoring them, but I always think the next commission should build off the previous one. Like you should be able to tell that they're done by me, but you know, like because I think it starts to build as a body of work, and if there's one that dips in quality, then it's hard to see it as a whole. If you see a bunch of pieces as a whole, and because the one that dips in quality will stick out like a sore thumb. You have all these really well achieved pieces, except this one or that one, and then it sort of diminishes the rest. And I want them to all live as a whole. And so, especially with people that are paying good money for this stuff, that's they get a lot of work, and some pieces will live in a portfolio, but I want my pieces to live on the wall. I'm going to take that next step and mat and frame it and hang it in their office or whatever. So unless it's a horrible monster and maybe their partners and
that will go in that person's office or study.
Yeah. not in the bedroom.
I'm telling you, man, if you took those pieces you're doing, and I always think of things in scale, and sometimes that makes a huge difference, but like I would love to see those pieces you're doing just as like 10-foot tall prints, or just to see the detail, to see everything,
Yeah.
Weird because I haven't seen any of these pieces you're doing in person, obviously. So my connection to them is like this big. It's on the screen.
It's funny because I have the Frankenstein piece back because it needs to go out of country to a country that can't accept mail yet. So like whenever I show them to Cam, he's like, oh yeah, they're not like.
Wow.
So they're not like. They're 12 by 15.
Wow. It's unbelievable, man. How many pens do you go through on one piece?
Oh, a lot. I'll go through because they're wonderful until they lose their tip and then they start to drag and break apart a bit.
Yeah.
So you go through, but then you can use those sort of broken ones for different areas to sort of fill. But you'll go through 3 or 4 in a drawing. Yeah. So
wow. It's extraordinary, man. I'm proud of you, dude. We've both come a long way.
We have. It's so crazy, right? I mean, I was thinking about that recently, and just because we've been chatting more on Sean's show and everything, and just thinking back to where we started, and you working on the Clerks books, and me doing bacon or whatever I was doing at the time, even like Bill the Clown and stuff, and it just was such a trip.
Yeah.
And now we're here, and we're still going to get better, but we're both pretty good at what we do.
I hope so. I know you are. The old work.
You are too, though. Like your stuff right now, like I really want to achieve sort of like how you just are really unbridled in your work. Like you can just sort of like, it's just you exploding on the page, but with absolute accuracy and knowledge of what you want to do. But there's just so much kinetic energy in your pieces, and I just like, oh man, like I wish I could loosen up a bit, and just be that free to just really explore like you do.
Yeah, but see, I personally don't. I mean, I love what you're doing so much that to me, it's like each person has their own path they're on, and for me, I feel like you're mastering and evolving the path you set up for yourself when I met you in the '90s. And
Yeah.
see some of the pieces we've looked at tonight. It's just like these extraordinary works where I know, well, I can't do that. That's not in my wheelhouse. And some of my favorite artists in the world are people that are so opposite of what I do that's the appeal for me. Is it's like, that's incredible that you can do that. I don't have any reference from what you're doing. And it's the same with my homeboy Mike Huddleston, who I've been friends with for like almost 30 years. It's like he's so technically good that I don't really, there's no frame of reference in my mind for how he's even doing what he does. It's just extraordinary to me. So it's interesting. But what I was going to say was, like, when I look back at the old stuff, I know every artist hates their own work, but you and Scott Morse, and like, I feel like your stuff back then was really, really good then. And when I look at my work, I feel like I had no idea what I was doing, because I really didn't.
Yeah. But see, I didn't feel like I knew what I was doing either. And I think that's what it is. I mean, I don't think any of us we always felt like the other guy knew way more than we did.
I guess I just felt like you guys had right away, right off the bat, like storytelling chops and this technical ability. And I was just a guy doing these weird drawings. And it just somehow caught on. Like, I somehow got work. I don't really know how any of this happened. But, that was a long time ago. But I just feel like I was really lucky in a way that the right people, including Bob Schreck, one of the main guys, was able to see something in what I was doing and say, let's give this kid a chance. Sure. Why not?
Now, there's one thing. So is there something from the past, though, that you did in the past that you wish you could bring into where you are now? Or have you just completely evolved past that point now?
Yeah, it's funny. I was on, Eli was in this chat a second ago. I was on his Grendel podcast a week or so ago. I got an opportunity to work with Matt Wagner in the early 2000s on a Grendel black, white, and red story.
Yeah.
And I did a Batman black and white story for Shrek that Brian Azzarello wrote. And I wish that I could redraw both of those stories right now, because they were done 20 years ago and they're both embarrassing to me and what I would consider to be terrible. And just from a overall point of view, the storytelling is bad, the drawings are bad, the figure work is bad. Everything's bad, Troy. And you can't rewind time, obviously. Like, I'm fine, but if you're asking for specific things, those two stories in particular, I wish I could redo now, knowing what I know, because I love Grendel and I still love Batman as characters. And I think I could really do something interesting and special with those now.
Yeah, it's funny because I would love to do the Neil Gaiman project again, like being able to draw like I can now. Yeah. I looked at it recently and it's fun and it's squishy and it's weird, and I love that about my old stuff. But knowing what I know about storytelling now, man, I wish I could have that one back.
Only the End of the World Again.
Yeah, it's only yeah.
I have that, dude. That's funny. The squishy.
Oh, it's so squishy.
I love that stuff, man. I mean, it had a immediate impact on me when I saw it. I was like, who's this guy? This guy's part of this crew too. Like, this is everyone was so different too.
Mm-hmm.
Like, work was so different from me, you, Scott, to like Andy Watson, to China Johnson. If we're talking about early Oni, like Renee French was in the mix.
Yeah.
And,
Well, and they had that Paul Pope story, and they had that Bill story. I was in Bacon was in an issue with Paul Pope and with Bill, which is really. I remember being in that issue with Bill and being tickled about that because I was like, "Ooh, Bill knows who I am now." But yeah, it's funny. Well, we've been at this for a while, and so we'll wrap it up. But we do like to ask people we're chatting with about some of the books they've been reading. But I love your take on this because you're gonna sort of take us through your inspiration pile that's sitting beside your desk there.
This is just what's in my studio today. Bisley's scrapbook.
Nice. Who put that out? Is that Atomic?
This is Atomica.
Atomica, yes.
In conjunction with Tundra, possibly. Badass Bisley art book. Just went to the comic shop today and picked up issue 5 of Huddleston's Decorum.
I'm bad. I'm waiting for the trade for that.
Look at that guy.
That's amazing. That guy's too goddamn talented.
This series is brilliant. Craig Thompson's new Ginseng Root.
Oh yeah.
He's writing and drawing this. This is
it
gorgeous.
Is it ongoing?
Yes. He's doing 12 issues. This is issue 6. This is the most current one. But man, this stuff is gorgeous, man.
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 He's such a nice guy too.
James Stocco. But this is crazy badass shit. I have a Godzilla commission to do, so I'm looking at this for inspiration.
Is that Dark Horse?
Yes. The Half Century War. Or no, I'm sorry. This is an IDW hardcover.
Oh, okay.
And then super nerdy Kirby Stan Lee thing. Stuff said from the guys that produced the Kirby Collector magazine. This came out like a year ago. I'm rereading it, and this is the entire Marvel history of Jack Kirby and Stan Lee and basically who did what. And it gets into kind of the conflict of where do things begin and where do things end with the creation of a lot of this stuff. This is for hardcore nerds.
I gotta read that. Yeah, I gotta read that.
Oh, you'll dig this, man. It's really fascinating. And this guy, John Morrow, who runs the Two Morrows publishing label, this guy doesn't mess around, man. He's done his research, and this is fantastic. And there we go.
That's pretty good, though.
Yeah. So I've always got a lot going on, but I just figured I'd show, like, this is just what I'm literally looking at today.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I was talking to Brandon a few weeks ago. He's someone who still reads lots of comics. You're obviously the same. It's strange when you meet creators who don't read comics at all anymore, like at all.
It's alarming to me, Troy, when I don't know if you call them jobbers, but the guys that are like, I just draw the books, but I don't go to comic shops anymore. I'm jaded about the industry and I don't read comic. For me, it's like the whole point of being in this is to be in the culture. The culture be in your life. So I'm excited to hear that you're like reading stuff again. It seems like you've been reinvigorated the last couple of years. And as soon as like I saw Black Sinister, man, and I bought that book, I was like, okay, Troy, something's going on here. I
started to find my feet again, and I was happy drawing again.
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah,
it shows, man, and it's exciting to see and witness it. Like we're all on this cool ride together.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, movies punched the crap out of me, and so, like I said, finding my feet again in comics was a very happy thing because, coming out of movies, I didn't know if I would be able to. And so there was that point where it's like, oh, do I go get a job at the box factory or, what do I do?
Yeah. I know we have to wrap this up, but there was a moment years ago where you told me you weren't drawing as much.
Mhm.
And to me, that was like, you are a born artist. You're a born drawer. Like, the world needs Troy Nixey art. It needs your voice. So I was very excited to see when you, I don't want to say you came back, but I was excited to see you like reinvigorate and like put things out again. And then
Yeah.
the current state of like where these commissions are at, man, is like, you jumped 17 levels up. Normally you go one at a time. You went like 17 rungs.
And I gotta get a few more up though.
It's exciting to see, man. It's really cool.
It's been a lot of fun too, and just the one thing about COVID though is a lot of this is happening, and it's allowed us to reconnect more and to share with fans and you know, collectors and everything. So that's been really nice as well. So yeah, it's been, you know, I guess silver linings and all that as much as you can, and something that's been, you know, so horrible and affected so many people in such a horrible way. But yeah, it's been an interesting year, lots of ups and downs, but yeah, just gotta keep plugging away. Is Cam still with us, or did he nod off there?
Yeah.
There he is. Any closing remarks, Cam? You're muted.
There we go.
Didn't want you guys to hear me snoring.
No.
No, that was really good. Another insightful conversation. Appreciate some of the deep cuts you guys always take, and plenty of insight that us standard collectors, readers usually don't get a lot of insight into. So greatly appreciated.
Of course.
Yeah, yeah, and it's always easy talking with people you've known for a really long time. So
yeah, definitely, man. It's no, you're right, Troy. It's like this whole Zoom thing has kind of changed the game for a lot of us this year, and it's good to come out of your shell every now and then and have a format and actually be more engaged with fellow creators, friends, and the audience, you know, fans, collectors. It feels like the scene has become more united in a way through all this. And for me, it's like, I'm looking for any positive stuff to come out of this year. So at least on that level, it's like, there's communities are forming, there's things happening, you know, it's just keeping a positive outlook about all that and moving forward and making cool shit, basically.
Awesome. Well, stick around, Jim, and I'll show you and Cam some stuff after we say goodbye to all the lovely, wonderful people who tuned in tonight.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot, guys. Have a good night.
Have a good one.